Welcome, everybody. We're just letting folks kind of stream in here. We're glad to see so many of our supporters showing up after this big news for the Boundary Waters. So we'll get started in just a few seconds here. All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Ingrid Lyons. I'm the interim executive director of the Campaign to Save the sorry, I got NMW already mixed up with the Campaign to Save the Boundary Waters and Northeastern Minnesotans for Wilderness. We're really happy to have you here today. Today, we're going to be discussing yesterday's big announcement from the Biden administration. They announced that they've filed an application for a 20-year ban on sulfide-ore copper mining on federal public lands in the watershed of the Boundary Waters. This is a huge, huge, momentous day. We are really happy to say that the 90-day comment period has started today, which today is also the 43rd anniversary of the passage of the 1978 Boundary Waters Act. So it's a really, really exciting anniversary and a really exciting day for the campaign. There's a lot to cover, so I'll be brief, but just wanted to introduce Becky Rahm, who's the national chair of the Campaign to Save the Boundary Waters. Also with us is Alex Falconer, the campaign manager of the Campaign to Save the Boundary Waters. So without further ado, I'll pass it off to Becky.
Thanks, Ingrid, and welcome everybody. It's really great to be seeing everybody today and talking about another momentous step forward in our quest to permanently protect the Boundary Waters from sulfide-ore copper mining. I'm going to walk you through yesterday's announcement, which took effect today with the publication in the Federal Register of the official application by the Forest Service for a federal mineral withdrawal, which is a mining ban, which would last for 20 years if approved by Interior Secretary Holland. There we go. The ecosystem that is impacted by this decision is really quite large. It's the full 4.3 million acre Quetico Superior ecosystem, which includes the Superior National Forest, the Boundary Waters, Quetico, and Voyageurs National Park. And if you look at the Federal Register, which recites the application by the Forest Service, you will see that this large, intact, healthy ecosystem is the fundamental basis for the application by the Forest Service. The Forest Service said in its application that this was a unique and incredibly valuable ecosystem in the United States. It was important for a variety of reasons, including climate change, and this action was intended to protect the entire ecosystem by ensuring that no sulfide-ore copper mining would be allowed in the headwaters of the watershed that covers the full ecosystem. This is a map that shows the geographic boundaries of the watershed. The blue squiggly line at the bottom in the where it says Superior National Forest is the Laurentian Divide. Everything north of that blue squiggly line is in the Rainy River Drainage Basin. That is the watershed of the Boundary Waters, Quetico Park, and Voyageurs National Park. This map shows also the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness, or much of it, not all of it's on the map. North of it, it shows Quetico Park, and to the west, Voyageurs Park. And what you see in brown is the path of pollution that acid mine drainage would follow if the watershed were developed for sulfide-ore copper mining. This map depicts the flowage of surface waters. So you can see with the big blue arrows how waters within the watershed, the southern half of the headwaters, which is unprotected now, would flow into the Boundary Waters, Quetico, and Voyageurs. And this is a fun animated map that shows you the same thing. The goal of the campaign to save the Boundary Waters is a permanent ban on sulfide-ore copper mining in the watershed of the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. Yesterday, a portion of our federal plan took a big step forward. We've had a 4-part strategy to protect the Boundary Waters, 2 at the federal level, 2 at the state level. The first part of our strategy is a federal administrative mineral withdrawal for 20 years of all of the federally owned lands and minerals in the Boundary Waters watershed. That's what happened yesterday, the beginning of the process to achieve that goal. Our second part is federal legislation that would permanently ban sulfide-ore copper mining in the watershed of the Boundary Waters. And we'll also talk today about what's going on at the state level. It was just weeks ago when we celebrated another step forward with our strategy at the state level for an administrative process to amend Minnesota's non-ferrous mining rules. So that's everything but iron ore mining that would ban mining in the Boundary Waters watershed. And then also we have state legislation that would permanently ban mining on state lands in the watershed. So let's look at the federal process and talk about what happened yesterday. The federal process has several distinctive parts. Yesterday, the federal government announced the start of the Mineral Withdrawal Study, which puts in effect a 2-year ban on new mining leases and new prospecting permits. During that time, there will be a study on the potential negative impacts of copper mining on the Boundary Waters. And at the end of the study, hopefully we'll achieve a 20-year ban, and that will be a springboard for Congress permanently protecting the watershed. So this is the basic structure of how this works at the federal level. Withdrawals, which are mining bans, protect waters and lands, bar the issuance of any new mining approvals. It can be done permanently through Congress or administratively through the executive branch. If it's done through the executive branch, the maximum ban period is 20 years. So what we learned yesterday was that the Forest Service applied for a 20-year mineral withdrawal of 225,378 acres of lands and minerals in the Superior National Forest in the Boundary Waters watershed. That application was filed approximately 2 weeks ago, and today there is a Federal Register notice that starts the process for reviewing that application. And with the Federal Register notice today, the entire 225,378 acres have been set aside from the federal mining program. That means within those lands and of those minerals, there can be no new approvals issued for this 2-year segregation period. And during this 2-year period, the Forest Service, together with the BLM, will be analyzing the impacts of a 20-year mining ban and analyzing the impacts of copper mining and taking public input. And then followed by that will be a decision by Secretary Holland on the 20-year mining ban. Now, this mining ban would be subject to any existing rights, just bars new approvals. Now, this is the map that was published yesterday. It's a beautiful map. The map shows in sort of dark green, olive green, the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. The watershed is shown in the red outline. It doesn't have the squiggles and curves that we saw with the Laurentian Divide, and that's because the software that's used only does right angles. But within the watershed, you see the color, I'd say, sort of light gold. All of that land and all of the minerals under that land are now subject to a 2-year freeze. So no mining can move forward on those lands and those minerals in the area that is gold. So you see it covers the south side of the wilderness. It surrounds the Cowish River and Birch Lake. goes up the Waikola chain of lakes over into areas north of Burnside Lake. That is the area that is being proposed for a 20-year mining ban. The companion action is Federal Bill HR 2794. And for that, I'm going to turn to Alex Faulkner, our campaign manager, to tell you what's going on in Congress with 2794. Alex.
Hi, thank you, Becky. And thanks again for everybody tuning in. I love seeing the chat and seeing people that I recognize saying hey from Yellowstone and Moab and all over the place. Which I think really just also goes to the fact that, I mean, this is a place beloved by Americans all across the country. So again, thank you all so much, and you all helped us get here. Yes, Representative McCollum's bill, HR 2794, is the permanent solution to what's the Biden administration just set up. So they can, by law, ban mining within an area for up to 20 years. Federal legislation can make it permanent. And that's what Representative McCollum has introduced. It's a follow-up to a bill that she also had last year, or last session. Then it was HR 5598. This time around, it's HR 2794. And actually the slide as of 9 o'clock this morning is outdated. We just added a 48th co-sponsor from North Carolina. So it's exciting. The momentum keeps going. So she reintroduced this bill this year on Earth Day, very appropriate timing. And what it does, like Becky said, it makes the withdrawal permanent. So it would be the permanent solution to sulfide or copper mining's threat to the boundary waters in the watershed. I guess, yeah, next slide. And this map almost directly correlates with the withdrawal map that Becky had up on the previous slide. All those minerals in the purple and yellow areas are going to be removed from the ability for the government to lease them out to mining companies once this bill passes. We are just on the bill's trajectory and timeline. It's going to be having a legislative hearing in Natural Resources Committee sometime early next year, at which point it'll go to the full committee and then to the floor of the House, at which point it'll also be sent to the Senate. And so one of the other projects we've been doing, not only shepherding this bill through the House, is working with the senators, both in Minnesota and across the country, to be aware of this issue and know that something's gonna be coming their way, so that they are prepared for it. And for anybody that signed any of our petitions, that's why, yes, this is a bill in the House, but we also send it also goes to whoever your senator is as an awareness point, making sure that they know that this is coming their way. Next slide. Yep, so 2794 was reintroduced. We're advocating for the Senate companion bill. And really this is our moment in time, which is why this is so very exciting for everybody that's been working on this for so long, that we have the opportunity now to get this passed through Congress and hopefully get it signed by President Biden by the end of this next session. And that is our goal. Next slide. And the next one again. Becky, I think this is where you're going to take back over.
Sure. This slide just emphasizes the path we've taken in our advocacy, where we combine science and litigation, a lot of public awareness and engagement. We engage with the business community, and we're also very mindful of how to manage this from a political point of view, all to save the boundary waters. And again, this is our permanent pathway, our pathway to permanent protection at the federal level. Now we're going to turn to the state level, and the state has two components, just as the federal strategy has two components. The first component is an administrative component that was started when Northeastern Minnesotans for Wilderness, which is the founder and lead organization in the campaign to save the boundary waters, sued the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources in June of 2020. We brought a novel lawsuit under the Minnesota Environmental Rights Act, claiming that Minnesota's non-ferrous mining rules were inadequate to protect the boundary waters because the rules allowed a copper nickel mine to be sited in the watershed of the Boundary Waters. The DNR recognized that we had an excellent case, and based on the strength of our complaint, agreed that NMW had established a prima facie case that the rules were inadequate. And together we recommended to Ramsey County District Court that the matter be remanded to the DNR to consider amending its rules if they were deemed to be inadequate to protect the Boundary Waters. Twin Metals intervened in that lawsuit and has been seeking to dismiss the case ever since. But nevertheless, on September 13th, the Ramsey County District Court judge remanded the matter to the DNR for consideration of adequacy on Minnesota's non-ferrous mining rules. On October 4th, the DNR issued its procedural order that sets out the process it will follow in considering whether the non-ferrous mining rules were adequate to protect the Boundary Waters, and if the non-ferrous mining rules should be changed to ban mining in the Rainy River headwaters. That triggered a 30-day public comment period that starts November 9th. So we have two important public comment periods. The federal mineral withdrawal comment period, 90 days, starts today. The state administrative comment period on our MIRA lawsuit starts November 9th. And a little later in this presentation, Alex is going to take you through what you do to participate in both of those processes. Alex is now going to talk to you about the fourth part of our strategy, which is a state bill to ban mining in the watershed of the Boundary Waters.
Great. Yeah, so we're not only are we working very hard in DC and the federal side for Betty McCollum's bill, but also in the state. And actually one of our authors of this bill, Steve Swedzinski, who happens to be my state senator as well, is on the call. So just a direct thank you to Steve. Thank you so much. We have the direct counterpart to the federal bill in the state here, Senate Bill 673 and House Bill 840. The state legislation in Minnesota would do the exact same thing as on the federal side, banning the ability for the state to mine or to allow mining in the watershed of the Boundary Waters, but for the state part on state controlled lands within the watershed. So it really, they fit together so well. We're trying to achieve the federal ban and the state ban, both of them really being a complement to each other to permanently protect the Boundary Waters from sulfide-ore copper mining. Next slide. So everything that we have going on right now, we've really kicked off some important moments in time for us. We have the federal comment period that starts today. Like Ingrid said in the beginning, it's the 43rd anniversary of the Boundary Waters Act, and it's also the first day of our comment period. So we have a website set up. There's a link in a coming slide here, but if you go to our main site, you'll find it as well. But we have the ability for you to both just click and hit send and sign for it. You can also alter it and write in your personal story, which I would encourage you to do. It's always good to just leave a specific note about why the Boundary Waters is important for you. And, if it's your family legacy history, if it's just hunting and fishing, you go wild racing, it's where you saw moose for the first time. All those things are just really taken into account for how special this place is. So please feel free to editorialize and make your comment as special as you can. The other thing you can do on our website also is just thanking our legislators who have done so much work to get us to where we are today. We would be hard pressed to have achieved the victories that we have without the leadership of Representative McCollum and Tina Smith, as well as then a lot of help from Representatives Omar, Angie Craig, and Dean Phillips supporting this whole endeavor as well. So we do have a thank you there. legislators like to be thanked as well. I think we usually reach out to them when something's going wrong and we want to fix something, but right now is the time to really just thank them. So please also click on that one on our website. So next slide. Also, we're about to enter into the MIRA, the Minnesota Environmental Rights Act comment period that'll begin on November 9th. So once again, that's a third way that you can help out. And that's, like Becky was saying, where the Department of Natural Resources is reevaluating the rules with regards to how sulfur copper mining could be permitted in the wilderness, but in the watershed of the wilderness. That'll begin on November 9th. And here's the link here, savetheboundaries.org/action. And we have it kind of set up where you can just take one action, then go to the next one. So they're all there, easy for you to help out with. So encourage you to please do those today, and then the state one starting on November 9th. Next section, this slide. And then, so we have all these public comment periods, but we need your help too. And we've got an entire team at your disposal, and they will work with you. If it's a comment writing party, I'm sorry, I got a note to speak up. Try to be louder if you can hear me. Comment writing parties, or if you just have questions or want to attend events that we have. Sydney Jordan leading our outreach efforts across the state, and then we have organizers across the state as well. So Levi, Maddie, Amanda, and Roberto can all help out in any way that you would like. So please get in touch with them if you have an idea, if you have any questions, or just want to get participating. Next section. And I guess that's it. So I think we'll open it up for questions. And there's been some, Ingrid's been kind of cataloging them in the chat, but thank you.
I can facilitate some question asking here. We've got a few. One that was asked by Deborah, thanks Deborah, is what is the impact on the current Twin Metals project as a result of this action?
Ingrid, I'll take that question. So Twin Metals needs a new federal mineral lease, a third lease, to be able to proceed with its mine project. The application for that lease was frozen as of today, and it's frozen for 2 years. And if the ban goes into effect by Secretary of Interior Holland, it's frozen for 20 years. If the bill, Betty McComb's bill, is passed by Congress and signed by President Biden, it's permanently off limits for mining. So the current project can't go forward. The BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, which is the agency within the Department of Interior that manages our nation's minerals, said in a document made available to the public a couple of years ago that without a third mineral lease, a Twin Metals mine is not economically viable. So we think that this stops the Twin Metals mine project from moving forward.
Great, thanks, Becky. We had a few questions as well, so it'd be great if you could just reiterate what would make this action permanent. There's some expressed concern about, both in terms of maybe a next administration reversing some of the protections, as well as more specifically, if there is a 20-year ban, is there a world in which a subsequent administration could end the ban before anything is made permanent?
Right. Well, our goal is permanency, and we are also cognizant that an administrative action is not as great as a permanent action, and the permanent action really is a bill passing through Congress. So what we are encouraging folks to do is to participate extensively, as much as they can, in the federal administrative record right now, the 90-day comment period. And we're encouraging the BLM and the Forest Service to complete its analysis as quickly as possible, and then use that science-based decision as a springboard for passage of a bill in Congress before the end of 2022. So that's the solution for making this permanent. We think until that happens, there is some risk of vulnerability. We're going to be calling on you next year to help us convince Congress to get this done and not leave it unfinished.
A natural follow-up to that, two of our Williams here in the Q&A section were asking about whether or not Senators Klobuchar and Smith support legislation providing permanent protection on the Senate side, and sort of if you could speak a little bit to the Senate component of that.
Sure. So both Senator Smith and Senator Klobuchar supported the completion of a mineral withdrawal study that was started in 2016. And in 2021, Senator Smith called on the Biden administration to initiate this new process that was initiated today with the announcement in the Federal Register. So I think they both are committed to science-based decision-making. I think when we get our analysis from the BLM and the Forest Service, the science will be clear. So we're optimistic that they then would take the step to introduce a companion bill in the Senate. But I think they do need that science-based analysis for firm footing for pushing the bill.
Anything you'd like to add, Alex, on the bill side?
No, I think that's right, and that's one of the reasons why we're trying to advocate everybody from across the country to please sign the petitions for the bill support. It'll also go to the Senate so they see both sides. And I think there was a question that maybe perhaps answered text, but somebody asked about if out-of-staters can comment and what they should do. Please comment on everything, even the Minnesota DNR one. We feel it's very important that the DNR gets a sense of how important this is from people from across the country, and it's not closed off only to Minnesota residents. So please also join in on that comment period when it opens on November 9th.
Yeah, thanks for reiterating that out loud. Yeah, a lot of questions about that, and it is counterintuitive to some folks, but yeah, we don't just want to hear from Minnesotans in the Minnesota state rulemaking process. So do please participate in everything. Another question that came up is of understanding a little bit about the Biden administration action and whether it's sort of starting at square one again, or if are you taking up from where the Trump administration canceled the study, just talking a little bit about that timing between the canceled momentum and then this new action.
Sure. I'll answer that, Ingrid. During the prior process, over 181,000 people commented. And so I want to say a giant thank you to all of you for participating in the process. All those comments exist in two places. They exist with the federal government and they exist with us. So we downloaded the entire portal of all comments before the mineral withdrawal was canceled. But those comments are part of the record. I would still encourage you to submit a new comment, especially if you have new information, because we need to demonstrate to the Biden administration that there is a tremendous amount of public support for a mineral withdrawal. We're going to be resubmitting our very technical science-based material, which is hundreds of pages long with lots of peer-reviewed science and economics. So it's all going to go back in the record. Much of it was introduced last time, but much of it is new. So we're going to be building the record for a good, positive decision. But we're not starting at square one, which I think was your big question. We're going to build off what happened before.
Great. Another question, it's a question we get often, and it's sort of become an inside joke a little bit on the campaign, but what about Canada? What's Canada's role in all of this, and how can we expect them to react to this news?
Well, Canada's happy. The border is governed by a treaty. The Boundary Waters Treaty is what it's called, the entire border between the United States and Canada. And the treaty has a very unusual provision in it. It says, we, Canada, promise not to pollute the waters of the United States, and we, United States, promise not to pollute the waters of Canada. So Canada has been paying close attention to the possibility of copper nickel mining in the headwaters of the Rainy River Drainage Basin, which is half in Canada, and in fact has commented to the federal government of the United States asking for an analysis of cross-boundary impacts and cumulative impacts, including commenting when the Twin Metals leases, which had been canceled in 2016, were reinstated and renewed by the Trump administration. So they're a player, been an important partner in this, and they are very concerned about protecting Canada's waters and aren't excited at all about the prospect of copper nickel mining in the headwaters.
Great. Thank you, Becky. Another sort of specific question, but sort of along a similar line of where we were at with the study, talking about the study. Jeff would like to know the status of the 60-page fully redacted report that was produced by the Forest Service during the Obama administration.
So that was an initial draft of an environmental assessment of the mineral withdrawal study. We don't have it. Our partner, the Wilderness Society, sued for it and got the 60-page redacted document delivered to it. And that's redactions that only documents of the highest national security generally warrant. But it's start over time. And so that document can be used by the Forest Service if it wants to glean anything from it, from the prior analysis. But we think our Boundary Waters wilderness is better off with a fresh look and fresh eyes under the Biden administration, an administration that we trust when it comes to science-based decision making.
Great. Another question, a little specific, but a good point. What this action from the Biden administration, David would like to know how many mineral leases are affected in total from this 2 years withdrawal period, aside from Twin Metals.
Well, the only two federal mineral leases in the Superior National Forest are the two leases held by Twin Metals. So no other leases are affected, but any pending applications for new leases are affected and are frozen. Likewise, applications for prospecting permits are frozen. So that's the status.
Great. Just going through the questions I'm finding left here. Tony would like to know if we feel as though Amy and Tina are going to use their political chips on engaging a little bit more assertively in public to support the path forward, and if we can talk a little bit about that.
I mean, I would just say right now they essentially have. They've helped to get us here to this point. They've both been advocating for a science-based process for the federal government to complete the study that was canceled by the Trump administration, so that there could be an actual unbiased source of information from which to make new decisions. So they have been instrumental in getting us to where we're at right now. And pending the results of the study, I think everybody on this call kind of can glean which way we feel like it's going to go. But that'll help inform both the potential for the 20-year withdrawal, but then also justification for a bill to permanently ban mining in the watershed. So we've been working with them for where we're at right now, and we'll continue to work with them as the study progresses and next steps start to make sense to be taken.
Great. Thank you, Alex. Mimi would like to hear just a little bit more about the significance of that third lease and how that impacts the profitability of the mine.
Well, the mine plan requires that footprint of the third lease in order to function. The BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, determined that without that third lease, the mine was not economically viable. Our view has been that this mine is a pretty skinny economic project all along. The mineral deposits that Twin Metals proposes to develop are low grade. They're not rich, which means it's a very expensive proposition. It also means that very few humans would ever be working on this mine. It really would be, for the most part, a minerless mine if it were ever to go. But we think that without the third lease, prospects are pretty dim for a mine to go forward. I would also say that the two existing leases are under legal challenge. They were canceled in 2016 when applications to renew the leases were rejected by the Forest Service. It was only later, with new legal counsel in the Trump administration, that those leases were reinstated and renewed. And we believe strongly that those actions were unlawful. Our two lawsuits challenging, one, the reinstatement, and two, the renewal, have been on hold since February, and they're on hold for about another 60 days. They're on hold at the request of the Biden administration, which is looking at those leases in light of its policy on the boundary waters and in light of the lease history. We believe that the outcome of that analysis will be that the leases were unlawfully reinstated and they will then be canceled. So we think there is a excellent possibility that there will be no federal mineral leases in the watershed of the boundary waters. The Mineral Withdrawal Map, I can take you back to it, I think. Well, maybe not. The Mineral Withdrawal Map covers the area of the two existing Twin Metals mineral leases. And so if those two leases are canceled and go away, the 20-year ban applies to them. Likewise, Betty McCollum's bill, which uses as its description the original 2016 map, that's why the maps are different, also covers the area of those two leases.
Thanks, Becky. There's a few more questions coming in. One was a little bit earlier in the chat, but bringing it back up. Amy's bringing it back up. It was originally a question from Dane. In addition to legislation, does our organization have any initiatives, or are there any initiatives that focus on education or alternative employment opportunities for locals who might oppose? And I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about the Ely Economic Community Development Project of NMW.
Sure. Well, first of all, I just say that I live in Ely. This is my community. I was born and raised here. It's really clear that the boundary waters is the economic engine of northeastern Minnesota. Study after study has shown that our area, our region, would be far better off, both in terms of jobs and income, without copper nickel mining in the watershed of the boundary waters. We don't have any unemployed miners in my community. We haven't had mining here since 1967, when the last hematite mine closed. But we are very interested in continuing the upward trajectory of our region to build even more a healthy and sustainable economy. And so Northeastern Minnesotans for Wilderness, the lead organization in the campaign, has had an economic and community development task force that's been working for the last couple of years to really dive into what can be done to make this area even more prosperous, attract even more new residents. And we've got some exciting projects going on that will be announced soon. But every indication we have is that we're doing well. We do present regularly on this material. We invite University of Minnesota and other economists to Ely regularly to talk about their findings. And so we do what we can to educate folks. But if you live in this area, it's pretty clear what our economic engine is, and that is the boundary waters.
Thanks, Becky. Got a few other questions here. One from Stephen in the Q&A is, do you expect any bipartisan support at both the Fed and state levels?
Yes. Public lands conservation has traditionally always been a nonpartisan issue. And just within recent memory here, last session, there's several public lands package bills that protected a lot of land across the country from extractive industries was supported in a bipartisan fashion. Previous iterations of our bill have had Republicans on it. We meet with Republicans in Congress consistently, particularly ones that have supported the Grand Canyon withdrawal, Chaco Canyon, Methow Valley. So there's been other instances where there has been bipartisan support, and we are in touch with them. And it is our expectation when this bill comes to a vote on the floor of the entire House that yes, it will be a bipartisan vote to support it. And likewise in the state level too. We're not there yet, but we are working at it, and we meet with members from both sides of the aisle consistently, and it's very much part of our plan to make this as open to everybody to support as possible.
Thanks, Alex. Another question that I might actually be able to answer a little bit is just a little bit more about marketing and PR and narrative initiatives that we might use to build some further support. And I can open it up to the other panelists as well. But at the campaign, we have a really, really excellent communications team. We take on a lot of different media projects every year. One great example, with the support of Patagonia, Alex, our very own Alex, ran across the Boundary Waters in something called the Boundary Waters Traverse, 110 miles. And there's a short film that was made about that with the help of our friends at Patagonia, like I said, and some other sponsors. And so we like to use sort of not usual media tools to get the interest of new constituencies and really spread the word about the Boundary Waters. I think a lot of people sort of mistake the Midwest as flyover country. And, one of our main objectives in our marketing is to really emphasize that we've got something really special here, and we're not to be ignored in favor of the coast or the mountains. And, all those wilderness areas are phenomenal and deserve protection as well. But just we definitely try to be a little creative in our marketing schemes around showing people just how amazing this place is. And it seems to work pretty well. So I don't know if Becky or Alex, you want to add anything to that? But
I'll just add two other examples, recent examples of our effort to reach new audiences. In July, we ran an ad on MSNBC Morning Joe featuring the late Walter Mondale, who was a terrific champion for the Boundary Waters and worked closely with us. And so that was a lot of fun. And second, we've just recently released the first series in a Boundary Waters podcast. And so I think there, Ingrid knows better, 3 or 4 podcasts now available through our Boundary Waters podcast that have been received with great interest.
The 4th one came out today. And we also did a little bit of recording just this morning for the 5th episode. So yes, very much a relevant project. Another question here in the Q&A from Bonnie that I think is definitely worth answering. Is copper nickel mining related to battery production? And might Twin Metals use this as a justification? So if we could talk a little bit about that pull that the Biden administration is also experiencing, that'd be great.
Yeah, so we hear this talking point from Twin Metals that its mine is needed for a green economy. And it's really not needed for a green economy, as this is part of its greenwashing. The deposits that Twin Metals has are very low grade and are pretty insignificant in terms of the supplies needed for the United States for a green economy. But even more importantly, any metal concentrates that would come from a Twin Metals mine would be shipped to Asia to be processed in smelters. Twin Metals is owned by Antofagasta, Santiago, Chile based. It's controlled by a billionaire family. And right now, all their copper from their copper mines in South America go to a low-cost smelter in China for processing. And that is what would happen to metals here. They would then be sold on the world market. We don't have any smelters in the United States for nickel. We have 3 smelters for copper, but they are at full capacity and vertically integrated with copper mines owned by the same company that has the smelter. It's an irrelevant and insignificant source of metals for the country, and certainly not a reason to damage America's most popular wilderness. What it would generate, the sulfide or waste from a mine would generate acid mine drainage, which is like battery acid, and that would pollute the boundary waters.
Thanks for answering that, Becky. I am actually not seeing any more questions at the moment. We've still got a number of folks on and have about 10 more minutes left. So if anyone wants to continue to ask questions, feel free to do so in the chat. I'll just bring them up as they come up. And if we don't have any, we can wrap it up. Oh, but that's a good point, Alex. Yes, if you're in the Minneapolis area, we are celebrating at Ladonia tonight from 6 to 10 p.m. We will also have a celebration event in Grand Marais tomorrow night. I think that's at the Cook County Community Center. And we will also be having an event in Duluth at Hoops on Tuesday. So if you're in any of those areas, please do join us. We'd love to see you in person if you're comfortable, and we'll make it we obviously have some COVID protocols in place and all that. And so it'll be safe and fun. But we're really excited to connect with everybody to celebrate yesterday's news. A few more questions coming in. Let's see, will a recording of the presentation be available? Yes, we are recording this and we will be sharing it. How are donations used? Does anyone want to address that one? I can also address it.
Well, for any of you who donate, thank you very much. The most of the campaign is funded by Northeastern Minnesotans for Wilderness. And when we started this campaign back in 2012, we were a tiny little organization with no staff and 200 members. And every dime that we've received from all of you has gone to pay for this campaign. We don't have a savings account. We spend on this campaign every penny. Up until the pandemic, we were sponsoring groups of people from around the country, a lot of them from Minnesota, to go to Washington, D.C. for a week every single month of the year. We did that from 2013 until March of 2020. We've also sponsored Kids for the Boundary Waters, and 150 kids have made their way to Washington, D.C. to lobby on this issue. We do a lot of education, a lot of public awareness. We have now a fabulous staff with a lot of science, policy, and legal expertise. You're seeing some of our great staff right now. We engage a number of scientists who help us in particular to work on this campaign. So it's really much appreciated. We try to use everybody's contribution as wisely as we can, and we're very grateful for the support that we've had from the community. And I might just say, many of us are volunteers. So I'm a volunteer. We have a very active board of volunteers and other supporters who give generously of their time.
Some remaining questions specific kind of to how to get involved with fundraising and what channels or media types that we're using to increase outreach and awareness, and leveraging technology. I sort of addressed this earlier, but yeah, we try very hard to make things, to use tools that are effective and efficient for our team. For example, our outreach team uses a tool called Outreach Circle, which allows us to connect with folks and to mobilize people on a really broad scale. And it's been a really useful tool for us. And we use different databases and things that, really allow us to do broad reaching communications and really huge calls to action with a single click of a button. And so we've been really trying to sort of hone in on our technology for several years now. And we're in a pretty good spot. With regards to helping with fundraising, there are volunteer opportunities. We haven't we haven't necessarily formalized a process for people to volunteer in order to support fundraising, but that is obviously more than welcome, especially when it comes to telling your friends and family about the campaign and about why you support the campaign. One really great opportunity for that is Give to the Max Day. Give to the Max Day is a giving holiday in Minnesota that everyone can participate in, but it's a huge day of fundraising for the campaign. It's on November 18th, but there is a pre-giving period that starts on November 1st. And that's a really awesome way to even make your own profile using givemn.org. And this is all information we will be sharing with our audience. But you can kind of make your own profile and share it with friends and family and have a goal and have them really help you in achieving that. And it's sort of a really great way to involve people that you think might be passionate about this issue as well, or want to support you in your passion for this this organization and this cause. So thanks again for everyone who has donated. The best way to give is through direct donation to sort of general operating. As Becky said, we spend every dollar that we bring in because we're just constantly cranking things out. And so it's very much a in one door out the other kind of format. So general operating is great because if we can then use it for our most pressing need in that moment. I would really encourage folks to check out the Star Tribune homepage today. We did an ad takeover. So that's a really good example of just sort of, seizing this moment and being able to, when you give, you enable us to just have the funds to do these really sort of broad reaching actions like the Star Tribune takeover. So much appreciated. A little bit of a rant, but just wanted to answer a few of those questions that I saw popping up. I don't know if Alex or Becky, you want to add anything to that? All right. Well, it seems like that's kind of most of the questions there, and we're running out of time. So if anyone has any questions that they didn't get to ask, the nice thing about our emails, it's that it's just our first names at savetheboundarywaters.org. So Ingrid at Alex at, Becky doesn't have one, but or you can do info@savetheboundarywaters.org if you want to follow up with any specific questions. But we very much appreciate you all being here. Please keep your eyes peeled for information about tonight's event and other events coming up, as well as opportunities to take action on behalf of the Boundary Waters. Thanks, everybody.